Coming up on this Eastern Conference edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. 1 week of the NHL season is in the books. Our surprises and are the Lightning in trouble? All that and changes may be coming to the way the NHL covers the draft. This is the Locked On NHL podcast. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello inside another Wednesday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me 5 days a week over at Locked On Senators alongside Mike DiStefano. You can find him at Locked On Maple Leafs. Today is Wednesday, October 18th. And Mike, I'm feeling good, man. Sens just got 2 wins over the weekend. The Leafs are 2-1, same record. So what's your overall feel after the first week of the season?
For the Maple Leafs or just in general? Where are we going with this one? In general, I'm loving that hockey's back. All right, I'm loving that hockey's back. Like, I'll say that, right? It's good to have it back in action, being able to find something to watch each and every night, even if it's not the Leafs or the Sens. You know, I enjoyed watching Connor Bedard, night one against the Pittsburgh Penguins, giving old Kyle Dubas an L. That was fun to watch, right? And there's just been so much great hockey that's been going on. And obviously, the story here in Toronto is Austin Matthews getting off to his torrid start with back-to-back hat-trick performances. So that's been fun to watch, obviously, from a Leafs perspective and covering that over with Locked On Leafs. So it's been a good start, good first week for the NHL.
What's your biggest surprise, your takeaway from the league in the Eastern Conference?
The biggest surprise so far, the Islanders are doing pretty good. I think they got a nice shutout victory again last night, but they haven't taken a loss yet. The Flyers are above 500. I thought that was a team that was going to be an absolute dumpster fire. So a couple of teams that I think early on that are, winning some games. I'm not sure that things are going to stay that way, but I would say that they're doing pretty good so far, having pretty good showings.
Yeah, for me, it's the Boston Bruins, man. And if you look at the schedule, it makes a little bit more sense, but it's like the third year in a row where it's like the hot pick to fall off. This year it was no Bergeron, no Krejci, but as long as they have Marchand, Pasternak, McAvoy, Lindholm, and competent goaltending with their coaching that they get from Jim Montgomery, like, they're not going anywhere. Now, you can dive into the numbers, which I will do right here. And despite winning 3-1 over Chicago, 3-2 over Nashville, and that Nashville game, they did get outshot, and Nashville went 0-for-7 on the power play. So it could have been a different game. One goal
game.
Not a
good team. That's not a good team, by the way. Nashville, they got dummied last night, too, in Edmonton. Not a good team.
Well, who wanted to play Edmonton after the way they lost both games to Vancouver? That they were due to pop off after the way they played. You can go check out Locked On Canucks, who basically called Elias Pettersson the McDavid stopper. It was a hilarious episode there. We've got local experts on all the biggest stories, 32 different shows on the Locked On NHL network that pumps out daily 30-minute podcast. But yeah, we look at Boston, and after 7 games this season, they will already be done both ends of their regular season home and home with the the Anaheim Ducks, even worse, and the Chicago Blackhawks. Like, that's like the 30th and 31st, if not dead last team in the National Hockey League, and they'll have 4 of their first 7 games against those teams.
Well, yeah, those are the teams that ended with the number 1 and number 2 overall picks of this past draft. So, yeah, those 2 teams stink, obviously. And I will say Chicago's been a little bit better than I thought they would be. Like, I just watched them play in Toronto, and, Toronto played poorly, but also Chicago actually did all right for themselves. And they're one of the surprise teams, I would say, but they're over in the West. So we'll kind of leave them to the side right now. But as for Boston, like, you would expect for them to make easy work of all of those teams. So, by game, what do you say? By the first 7 games, is that when that's done? Like, yeah, they should have an exemplary record in the next few weeks. But what can they do after that when they start taking on real squads?
Real squads. We're going really Deep cuts. Yeah, I just pulled up for those who are watching on YouTube, but you can see it. Like even after they get home from this road trip where they're in San Jose, LA, Anaheim, Chicago's their next 4 games. Then they come home. They have Anaheim, Detroit, Florida, and Toronto at home. So that's a 4-game homestand. They're going to be at home for a week and a half, and then it's just a 2-game road trip. Like, that's a pretty easy first 10 games, if you ask me.
That's a bizarre start to the sched too. Like you're starting off your season with 5, 6, 7 Western teams. 7 Western teams to start the year, both home and away. That's so weird, so bizarre.
And after their first 2 games, a 5-day break before the first game on the road.
Yeah, that's a strange sched. Really, really strange. Yeah, they've only played 2 games so far.
Yeah.
It was weird last week seeing some teams who were like 3 games into the season, and then others, it's like, oh, their first game is on Friday. Oh, they haven't played. It's now Saturday, and they're getting their first bit of action. It was actually kind of weird to look at the standings and see teams and the games played discrepancy so early in the year, but that all evens out eventually.
It all evens out. So yeah, Boston, one of my surprises. And then I was actually back home in Ottawa this weekend, got to go to both games. So I saw Philly, I saw Tampa, and man, the Lightning are in trouble. I know they didn't have Steven Stamkos in the game that I went to, and we already knew that Andrei Vasilevsky was going to be out for the first 2 months of the season. Heck, Matt Tompkins was not the reason that they lost the game against Ottawa on Sunday. I thought he actually played pretty well in goal for Tampa. Jonas Johansson, you could probably say should have gotten at least 1 win in the few losses he took.
I mean, he's just not a good goalie. Like, and that is a problem. And look, I remember when we heard the news about Vasilevsky, I went and I dug into some of the numbers last year. The Tampa Bay Lightning were like middle of the pack in terms of expected goals against. Like their defense is not what it used to be, right? They've had a lot of moving parts depart that team that from those Stanley Cup teams that they had a couple of years ago. And you look at Victor Hedman, who's kind of fallen off as he's, getting into his mid 30s. And there's not much around him, right? Eventually, we knew that this team that was, so good for so long was going to fall off, right? We just knew that it was going to happen. And without the backbone, Andrei Vasilevsky back there to hide some of those deficiencies that they had defensively, they're starting to show now. There's some cracks in that armor there. So they got to hope that they can try and piece things together and keep it at least relatively close and stay 500 or somewhere around that range for the first 2 months, or they're going to have some deep holes to dig out of once he gets back in December, January.
Team save percentage right now, .893 through 4 games.
Gross. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good, eh?
No.
As Louis Domingue would say, not the best.
Well, no, the thing is, and they should really be happy that the Buffalo Sabres allowed to tie that game with 7 seconds left on Tuesday night. Like that was a point that you could look back at once Vasilevsky, and it's like, oh, okay, like now we're 500 because we got that cheeky point. I know they lost in overtime, but like that wasn't a game that I think that they deserve to win necessarily. But you look at it, and with all of the changes you mentioned on defense, it was time for Mikhail Sergachev to be a number 1 pairing guy. And what's he got? 1 assist, -6 through 4 games this season. Like they need him to be better. I thought Hedman was pretty good on Sunday in Ottawa. He's got 5 points in 4 games, so he's doing what he can at least. Darren Radish got walked by Brady Tkachuk on what ended up being the insurance goal in that game. He's got to be a bit stronger on the puck back there. Calvin DeHaan, who they kind of saw as like, hey, a couple of years younger than Zach Bogosian, who I know is still there looking for a trade. He got into 1 game, but he hasn't played well. He's a -3 so far. Like they haven't had a lot of help on the back end, and also up front, like they've had no depth. Tanner Jeannot has 3 points. He was brutal when I saw him live. Nick Paul was -3. Connor Sheary's got no points in 4 games. He's -6 in
Brandon
4.
Hagel, though. Hagel's a scorer. That guy's pretty good. I'll say that. I do like Brandon Hagel.
Hey, he's got 4 goals in 4 games. Like they do have skill in that team, and that's why you're wondering. Braden point per game, but he's still looking for his first goal in the season. Like I noticed Austin Watson was one of their most noticeable players on Sunday, and I know it was a revenge game for him. He got a bit of a video tribute in that. I mean, say whatever you want. He was there for 3 years, but I would have just put up the graphic, not
thank you. Yeah.
And he wasn't even watching it. He was like purposely ignoring it. It's like, we're doing this for you. I don't care to see a 30-second video of you doing charity work because they couldn't find enough of him putting the puck in the net or losing fights. Like if you're not watching it, why am I? So anyway, he gave a little hat tip to the crowd. But no, I think Tampa, man, they're really going to have to keep their head above water here without Andrei Vasilevskiy. And that's not a surprise. That's why I asked you the surprise first, because we knew that they could be in trouble without Andrei Vasilevskiy in the lineup. But it's a bit worse than I even thought it was. It would.
Well, I am looking into the numbers now up on Natural Stat Trick, and the Lightning are the 5th worst team in expected goals against at 3.12 at 5-on-5, but they've given up more goals than any other team in the NHL. They're averaging 4.15 goals against at 5-on-5 through the first 3 games of the season, which is number 1 in the league, or number 32, however you want to look at it. Not great, not great. And look, again, we somewhat anticipated this could be a problem, and it's a team that's going to have to outscore those woes. And the offense has to pick up here, but they surely are going to have to pick up their game defensively if they're going to want to hover around enough so that they can still make themselves, known as cup contenders like they've always been.
If you're a Lightning fan, though, you can take solace in the fact that they're coming home for a 5-game homestand right now. So they just played 3 on the road, all 3, though, against divisional rivals. They end up with 1 point in Detroit, Ottawa, and Buffalo. That coming in the last game against the Sabres. They got out in all 3. Mikey, in the 3 games, dude, the shots for versus shots against, not even close. 72 shots for, 111 against.
Brutal. Yeah, that's not good. It's not good, eh? But I'll say this too. Like you mentioned, they lost 3 games to 3 divisional opponents, and like all 3 of those teams are the 3 teams that have been highlighted as, these are the teams specifically that could take advantage of this Vasilevskiy injury and try and bank points while he's gone, and they're doing it. So
And they certainly did. Coming up next for the Tampa Bay Lightning, they've got Vancouver tomorrow, followed by Toronto, Carolina, 2 tough games, then San Jose, Seattle to close out that 5-game homestand before they take off on another 4-game trip with stops in Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, among others. So more divisional matchups, basically the opposite of the Boston Bruins. Okay, plenty more in the Eastern Conference to get to. Shane Pinto still unsigned. We're 4 games into the season. What's going on there? And Mikey, when you mentioned the draft earlier, smoke started coming out of my ears because they're trying to take away our beloved NHL draft. How? We'll discuss next. You're listening to Locked On NHL. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. eBay Motors has the passion, the drive, and the patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy, but it also keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number 1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
We also want to thank our good friends over at Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind when you're purchasing. You can see the view from your seat before you even buy it, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total upfront, so you're never going to get caught with a great deal without those hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. You can find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, hockey, baseball, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Welcome back to the Locked On NHL podcast, your team every day. A reminder, we have local experts on the biggest stories 5 days a week, every weekday, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. You can find me at Locked On Senators. Mikey's over at Locked On Maple Leafs. And for some reason, Mikey, the Sens and Leafs don't go head-to-head until November 8th. Come on, man. Usually it's the first week of the season. I know you guys already got one against the Habs. Like, I need it.
Is that what Shane Pinto's waiting on for the Battle of Ontario? Is that it or what?
I don't know what's going on, man. I've got a tinfoil hat take though, because the good news in Ottawa is that Josh Norris will make his season debut, his first game in 270 days. He hasn't played since January 21st of last year. Suffered a shoulder injury, tried to rehab, came back, played 3 games, and then needed surgery. So they shut him down, then had a few complications at the start of this training camp. So he's been slow and steady getting back in the mix, but Coach DJ Smith saying no restrictions. He's taking full face-offs. He's going to be on the power play in the one-timer spot. And my tinfoil hat take, because we know Josh Norris is making just a shade under $8 million per season. I think that Pierre Dorion knows what the market is in terms of trades, because they have to clear cap to sign Shane Pinto. No matter what, they're right up against it. It's either going to be Mathieu Joseph, who's been out to a red-hot start to the season.
Yeah.
He makes $2.95 for the next 3 years. Dominic Kubalik makes $2.5 million on an expiring contract, and Eric Brandstrom makes $2 million with 1 year left on his deal. In a perfect world, you keep all 3, right?
Yeah. That Kubalik deal's a hell of a contract, by the way, for that player. You would think teams should be lining up to take on that contract.
So the thing with Dominic Kubalik, though, and I laughed because I was at the game with Pilsy, my co-host at Locked On Sens, and he hates having the puck on his stick. He's a shooter as much as shooters can be. Oh. This guy's a one-timer machine.
Grip it and rip it, buddy. But man, dude scored 30 goals the 1 year in Chicago?
Playing with Patty Kane, but yeah, as a rookie, but then 20 last year still with Detroit. So yeah, he's a bit of a player. But my take here is that Josh Norris, we saw him come back and only play 3 games. I think that Pierre Dorion is like, hey, what if Josh Norris gets hurt again? And if that's the case and it's long term, then you can put him on LTIR, keep all 3 of those guys, and use that money to sign Shane Pinto.
So he's kind of hedging a little bit, thinking we might not want to make a move if it's not necessary.
Right. Because you haven't seen Shane Pinto in 270 days.
Right. I mean, best case scenario, that doesn't happen though. And he stays healthy. I mean, I'll take a Norris and Pinto over a Norris and any of those 3 guys, right? Like that's clearly going to be the MO, the Ottawa Senators. But I mean, yeah, I guess if you're a general manager, you have to kind of have that long-term thinking. You don't want to make a move. You don't have to wait for, Norris to show that he's healthy and then force yourselves into having to make that move as opposed to being proactive on it. Yeah. Okay. I could see that.
It's been a long
I think they should still sign him regardless. Like, let's get this done. Let's get Pinto back on the ice.
I know it's honestly, it's becoming a bit of a concern. He's one of my favorite players to watch. I love, and this is probably the craziest stat. They've all been on this team, Stützle, Norris, and Pinto, since 2020, like the COVID season. They've played 26 games where all 3 of them are healthy, because Shane Pinto missed all but 5 games 2 years ago, and then Norris missed all but 8 games last year.
And let me guess, solid record in those games?
16-8-1, but who's counting?
Yeah, you're counting.
Yes, I am. But that's the view from Ottawa. I'll get the view from Toronto, from Mikey, after another quick word. And then we've been teasing it, but these are our hottest takes of this episode, like the NHL draft. What are they thinking? What could happen? What is the future of the NHL draft? We'll discuss that next. You're listening to Locked On NHL. Today's episode of Locked On NHL is brought to you by Sleeper. Sleeper is the daily fantasy that you need. It's the official daily fantasy app of Locked On NHL Network. It's our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially fantasy hockey. Your favorite players, you can bet on them to win big. So if you're me, I'm a big Brady Tkachuk guy, as you could imagine. Back-to-back 2-goal games, that's a way to win. How about back-to-back hat tricks? I know there weren't any hats thrown on the ice in Toronto, but you can get money in your cap if you have Austin Matthews on your side. So you can choose stats like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more. You heard me, NHL fans. 100 times payout on Sleeper. So start paying attention and get your picks right, and you could win big. Just use our promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Now, terms and conditions do apply. That's Locked On NHL, only available to U.S. customers for now. Use Sleeper's terms of use for details. Welcome back, Locked On NHL. You can like and subscribe to the show wherever you download your podcasts. We are free and available on YouTube, as are all of our great Locked On NHL shows here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I have this sick addiction, Mikey, that after the Sens win a game, I go watch the Locked On NHL team show that the Senators beat.
That's brutal. That's brutal.
But
and
I also
usually
the view from the other side before games too are fun. Where
Yeah.
it's like, what's going on with said team? Well, you can get the local experts view every day, guaranteed. Locked On NHL.
I do that all the time. I already got it ready to go. You know, the Leafs, they got the Florida Panthers tomorrow. I'm going to go and see what Armando Velez of Locked On Panthers has to say about this matchup. What's going on with Florida? What do we got to worry about? That's why I think the Locked On Network is great, right? Like, you can get any piece of information about any hockey team, any sports team, obviously. There's not just hockey, but at your fingertips with the Locked On Network and podcasting. So it's a great technology is a good thing when it comes to that type of stuff.
So it's so good. It's so good. Oh, just a quick funny aside, and I want your take on the Leafs as well. So Ottawa just got in a new study, and say what you want about the qualifications of a new study. Ottawa's the second fastest speaking city in Canada. Okay. And in this study, they said political podcasts like Locked On Senators play a role in this.
What?
Yeah.
You get political over on Locked On Sens, do you?
I couldn't believe what was sent to me. It was a guy from the industry, and he's like, I couldn't believe it. So there you go. Apparently we're a political podcast.
Are we a political show like Locked On NHL? Does it get no love? I mean, we could start talking about the House of Commons. There's just a lot going on there. Locked On House of Commons.
No doubt. Well, the funniest part, because it's Ottawa being the fastest speaking city. Neither Pilsy or I live in Ottawa. So does it count? Now, that's where you said technology is great. Well, that's one of the reasons. I'm from Ottawa, but don't live there right now. So it's great that we get to follow the team closely. What's the big story on Locked On Leafs right now with you and Dave Morisuti?
Well, after not looking so great against the Chicago Blackhawks, 4-1 loss, but we'll move on. Just like Jalen Hurts always says, you take a deuce, you flush it. Some line changes that are occurring already for this team. Yeah, the deep pair is getting shaken up. I think I saw that Matthew Nyes might be moving up the lineup as well. So lots of different lineup changes coming in this upcoming matchup against the Florida Panthers, which will be a revenge game. Keep in mind, Florida eliminated Toronto in the playoffs last year. So the Leafs, they're certainly going to want to get that victory going into their building for I believe it's their home opener too. So it should be a good game. I'm excited for it. But yeah, we'll be previewing that show tomorrow morning on Locked On Leafs.
Nice. Okay, we've waited long enough, Mikey. What the heck's going on with the NHL draft?
Dude, I saw this come across my timeline today that the NHL is considering like a remote status for the teams, and I just don't understand. So lay it out for the good people who don't know exactly what we're talking about, and then we'll kind of break it down and give our thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's really frustrating because Elliot Friedman, I was listening to 32 Thoughts the other day, and they brought this up, and I get it, but like, I don't like it. So the tweet was Elliot Friedman The NHL has officially notified teams that it would like to hear their opinions on decentralization of the draft, having clubs stay at home while prospects attend. If there's a desire to change, would most likely happen in 2025. There's an outside chance that it could happen this year.
Absurd. Like, I understand a lot of people look, and I saw, who was it that was tweeting about it? It was Drew Livingston of SDPN saying, hey, the NFL draft does that, right? They're all centralized, and it makes a lot of sense, and it works for them. Why couldn't it work for the NHL? I think a big difference in why the NHL works the way it is with the teams and the players all in the same building together. The hype isn't around the prospects necessarily in hockey like it is around the NFL and even the NBA. Like, those guys, they go right to the sport. They're going on those teams, and they're going to go right to the NA, or they go right to the NFL, right to the NBA, and those guys are going to be there and play for you. That's not the same with the NHL. Outside of like the top 5, a normal everyday fan doesn't really know who these prospects are. So what really drives it, in my opinion, what I'm always excited about is the speculation or the potential of trades to happen. And that all occurs on the draft floor. The draft floor, to me, is what's most interesting about the draft. Once the first couple of picks go, and sure, there's some random surprises here and there when somebody goes a little bit early, like when Barrett Hayton went number 5, a couple of years ago, or when Jesse Puljujarvi got picked, it was Pierre-Luc Dubois got picked at 3 ahead of Jesse Puljujarvi. I was in the building for that draft, and I remember that being a big shocker when it all happened. Yeah, sure, that stuff exists. But like I said, after the first 5 picks, it's all about the speculation of what could happen with the trades and with the teams and the players, and having everyone in the building, having the GMs all on the floor really is what drives that narrative and drives all of that. I wouldn't want to take it away. I think that would be a really silly thing for the NHL to do. I don't like it. Not one bit.
Me neither. And some of the accounts or people that are saying, oh, do it. It's like, a part of it is saying that, like, oh, the photo takes so long. They go up, they put on the jersey. Like, that's my favorite part.
Who cares? Like, that's when, you're taking time to analyze the prospect also, realistically, is what's happening in the background, especially when it's being broadcasted. Maybe when you're live, it might be a little different because maybe it drags out when it's live, but the teams have 10 minutes to make their pick anyway. So what else are you going to do in that 10 minutes? Have nothing on the stage? At least there's something to watch on the stage during the 10 minutes that the next team has to make their selection. So I'm not really sure why that bothers people at all. I really don't.
No, and I'm glad that that's the case for you too, because yeah, for me, it just makes absolutely no sense. It's almost like disrespectful to the prospects that work their entire lives to have their moment. Like, they want to have their family in attendance, but also, like, I get that some of the prospects would still be there, but I like the stories of the kids too, who maybe don't get picked on the first day, but they're there. And then the second day, they still get the opportunity to go down, shake hands with the GM. There's usually some legends of the team at the table, or, they get to meet the whole scouting staff, the people who have followed them closely throughout. Like, there's just so many reasons why having everyone together, not to mention, I mean, I guess the problem is now they're like, oh, Vegas. It's going to be in Vegas. They're like the awards, like everything. But if you spread out the wealth, like, it's great to showcase that city that maybe wouldn't get an all-star game because of weather concerns. Like, you could have it I know the all-star game's in Toronto this year, ironically, but usually they like the warmer weather places for that. But you could have a Winnipeg as the NHL draft, or a Vancouver. Like, you wouldn't have necessarily a winter event there because everyone wants to, pack their sandals and everything. But I do think that you'd be able to get more of these northern climates available for the draft.
Yeah, I'm not sure why this is becoming a thing or a topic of conversation. Why the NHL is approaching this? Like,
if you want me to play the other side, it's the fact that it's so close to the free agency. If the draft's in Montreal, San Jose's entire brass has to get back to San Jose in a day and a half before they can do all that.
Dude, but that was last year. I think was a little different.
Same days. This year,
same. There's only a couple of days in between. That's on the NHL. Why does it have to be so? Like, move it up a few days. Like, what? I would suggest that perhaps. No, don't take away this event from everybody who wants to go and likes it. Just move the draft up a couple days. Like, if you don't know who you're taking at number 1, like the Blackhawks didn't know on June 21st instead of June 28th, who they were taking first overall, you don't deserve to get that player. Like, you clearly don't want that player. You don't care about that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just, if that's the reason, the easier alternative is changing the date just a couple days earlier.
Yeah, no, I'm all in with that. So let us know in the comments what you think. Should the NHL draft be centralized? Everyone, teams, players, families, coaches, everything in the same exact room? Or should people be on Zoom and just kind of go through the motions and allow these kids to just go up, I guess, get a jersey from Gary Bettman? Like, that's what the NBA does, where it's the commissioner that gives you Roger Goodell. Like, they give you the jersey. I think the team really makes it unique and makes it very NHL. So I'm hoping they stay, but let us know. Maybe you've got reasons why you think it should be decentralized. You can let us know that in the comments. Mike, any quick final thoughts on today's show?
I have a pack of Timmy's hockey cards. Do you want to open it live on air?
Yeah, let's do it real quick. I'm sure the audio listeners are going to love it. So
let's open it live on air. Well, I'll walk them through and I'll talk about what we've got here. So we'll do that. But, these are fun. I do enjoy them. I'm a big hockey card collector in general. All right, so what do we got here? We've got a Logan Thompson. Nice Logan Thompson. They're off to a hell of a start, this team here.
Yeah.
Boom. Trevor Zegras. Nice little Trevor Zegras insert. What's that? Superstar Showcase. A Trevor Zegras. That's a decent little card. Nice shine. Nice foil. And we'll finish her up.
Mistaken in that one.
What's that?
Playing the Leafs in that game. Looks like a little blue and white in the background.
It's either, no, I think it's the Lightning, actually. Looks like Hedman might be in the back.
Trying to bring it to the Eastern Conference because all three of your cards we got.
I know. Rupe Hintz is the other one, and Rupe Hintz looks like they're playing. It's Van Riemsdyk in the back, so they're playing the Washington Capitals. So there you go. There's a little Eastern Conference love in there.
That's awesome, man. Those are fun. You can go check those out. No free ads, but you can go check those out at Tim Hortons. Those are great fun.
Grab a drink, only $1.
You can check out more hockey cards at Mikey_Canuck on Twitter. You can follow me at Ross Levitan. The show is the Locked On NHL podcast, free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube. Thank you for tuning in to another edition. Tomorrow, we'll hand it over to the power rankings of Locked On NHL. We'll be back next week for another exciting, how many games? There's games every night, man. There's lots of games between now and then, but I'm hoping next time we talk, Shane Pinto is signed. I'll leave it at that. For Mike DiStefano, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On NHL podcast, your team every day.